Hello. Thank you very much for joining us. Can somebody just put a comment, please, to let you know, or let me know if you can hear me before we start? We'll just do a quick sound check. So, can everybody hear me? Somebody just pop a comment, please. Or if it comes.
Drum roll.
Robin Morell, you've already said hello, Sam, so I'm leaving it to you. Yes, excellent. Right. Thank you very much for joining us. Right, yes, now we've got about 15 of you. Brilliant. First of all, thanks very much to everybody for joining us. I think it's fair to say that we're in pretty unique times as a sales community. And that was one of the reasons that I've been very keen to put something together like this. Not because we've got all the answers, because we most definitely haven't, because to my knowledge, neither of these three are old enough to have solved for a pandemic before. But what they have got a lot of experience, and they have been consistently successful through tough times before. So the idea today is not sales training 101. It's to bring together three high-performing salespeople, allow them to chew the fat, allow them to bounce around ideas. And I know already the three of them have picked up stuff from each other through the prep calls that we've had for this. So what we're doing is I'm going to hand across to the guys so they can introduce themselves. Then we're going to be coming on looking at how they're finding their market at present, and hopefully you'll find some similarity with that. We'll do a bit of stuff and discuss mindset and logistics and how we're going about it. And then we'll come on to looking at customer priority and things like that. So we'll be trying to ask questions at the end. So if you can ask any questions that you've got in the Q&A section, either based on what the guys are talking about or anything specific that you want to share with us that you want the guys to have input for. So without further ado, I'm going to hand across to Craig. I think we'll start with you. You were the juggernaut, as I introduced you as first. So let me hand across to Craig. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for taking the time out to listen to the three today, Chew the Fat. But just a quick intro to myself. I think Sam did a half decent job on LinkedIn, but just to normalise everything. I'm a married father of two children. I've got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. I'm 5 weeks away from baby number 3, 2 dogs and a cat. So, in terms of this pandemic at the moment, it's we're definitely juggling a few balls. I think Milton's going to jump out of the wardrobe at some minute and say, from SAS, he dares who wins, and say, tell me this was a mental capacity test. But it's not, right. So, Sam asked me to come and do this, which I'm, more than happy to support a good friend. So just in terms of my career, I've been 10 years within the software industry. I've worked at 2 amazing companies, Click and Ultrix. Right place, right time, pre-IPO and post-IPO for both organizations. The current role now, which I've been doing for about 1.5 years, is a global strategic account director, which in short means I manage 5 accounts globally. I've got my own small team, so I've got a PR who supports me, and I've also got a customer success manager who supports me as well. So, within that small team, I've also got a larger virtual team that I manage globally. So that's me. So, Chris, do you want me to pass the baton over to you?
Yeah, good afternoon, guys. So, Chris Ogrisvich, currently account director over at Tron Micro, looking after the financial services sales. I guess, again, everyone's talking, let's make things a little bit more personal. I'm in quite a unique position at the moment. Just yesterday, my sister gave birth to twins. And it's a bit of a weird time, because normally, this is the sort of time the family would be getting together, everyone rallying around and that sort of thing. And as it stands, it was just a WhatsApp call, see my new niece, nephew and all that sort of thing. So that we've all got our personal reasons as to why we're looking forward to the lockdown coming to an end. And certainly for me, it's an opportunity to go see my sister, meet my nieces and nephews and that sort of thing. In terms of my role, quite fortunate. So financial services sales at Trend Micro. So I look after about 15 accounts, and they're a mixture of banks, investment and asset management firms, and also a couple of fintech customers. But I've also got a bit of a hybrid role. So there's also some new business in there as well. So I've also got sort of probably around 15 accounts, which I'm looking at engaging, starting to strike dialogue with, open conversations and open opportunities. So my time is split probably 60% those existing accounts and the other 40% trying to generate new business.
Thank you. And Dan, finally.
Yeah, hi guys. A big thank you to Sam. You've saved me from trying to complete an impossible level on Crash Bandicoot, which is the new favourite game in the household here. So Dan Mahoney. I work for Autodesk, and I've got a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old. So to add a bit more sort of make this a bit more personal, I'm trying to manage the challenge of doing mathematics homework, which is impossible, and also comprehension homework, which I know nothing about. So I'm really grateful that, Sam, you've given me the opportunity to join you guys here. A bit more about me. So I work for Autodesk, and I work in our named account business, focusing on our digital manufacturing customers. So I've got 8 customers, 8 large automotive and aerospace customers that I manage, focusing largely on the manufacturing solutions. And I think, as we're going to discover today, it's everyone's sort of finding this crisis different, and it's challenging. And specifically for my customers, it's particularly hard when they can't physically go into an office or a shop floor and actually make things. So that's me, Sam. Thank you.
Superb. So thanks very much, guys. So very briefly now, and I don't want to go into this in too much depth, but a couple of sentences each. If we again same kind of order, how are you finding the market at the moment? How's your pipeline looking? Craig, starting with you.
Yeah, if we just move the pipeline specific to one side, I think it's obviously we're in a challenging space. I don't think anyone, as you said at the start of the call, has been through this before. However, companies haven't stopped. Okay, the people that I'm selling to, 5 large organizations globally. Yes, this, decision-making timeframes have got longer. However, more complexities to the sales cycle. However, we are trying to do, business as usual. As much as we can. We can discuss later on the call how it's all impacted us personally. Look at some of the organizations that I sell to, a highly secured lockdown bank. People are used to going in to Canary Wharf, for example, every single day. They've now got to juggle that at home. So obviously that provides some more hurdles. However, I think in the majority of cases, we are starting to come through the other side of it, and people are learning how to sell and buy more importantly in this pandemic.
Thanks, Craig. Chris, on to you.
Yeah, I was going to say challenging, but I think Chris done a really good job of covering that. I think my other observation is interesting, and I guess what I mean by that is, in sales, no 2 companies are the same, no 2 requirements are the same, but repeatability is really, really important. If something works well for an organization, a similar organization in a similar sector may well be having a similar challenge. And what I found really interesting is, I can look across my pipeline, and certainly active at the moment. I've got 2 organizations that on the face of it are similar. They've both got, in the face of relatively similar challenges. There's obviously intricacies in there that make things slightly different. But, on the one hand, I've got one of those customers telling me, Chris, this is push right out. This is not a priority for us at the moment. And the other organization saying, actually, if anything, this has made it even more of a priority. We need to move full speed ahead. So I think, I find that an interesting observation. I guess some of the job for us as sellers is start to realize what's driven that different behavior in the organization that now see it as a priority, and what are the lessons we could take from that to start to have frame discussions in a different way with the customer that's clearly knocked it down the list a little bit.
I think before we come on to you, Dan, because I know you're in quite a unique situation, so we'll come on to that in a sec. And I think we'll jump across now, just looking at customer priorities, because it's something that we discussed that you all agree that drastically changed in the last few weeks. So now's perhaps a good time, and I think you touched on it as well, Craig. It's all well and good thinking about how we sell, but actually you've got to try and understand how your customers buy and what their priorities are and how they've changed. So just one of you maybe, Craig, if you want to just go into that briefly?
Yeah, there's one thing that I wanted to mention as well. Look, we're going through a pretty interesting time at the moment. However, I honestly think that this is also going to spin out the back of this with a lot of opportunity, because, yes, I fully appreciate businesses are failing. There's going to be some super hard hit people out there. However, it gives us all time to take a step back. plan properly for hopefully hitting the ground running in, may that be a month's time or 2 months' time. So, that's one thing that I think is an opportunity for everybody that works within sales to just almost recheck and rethink of their strategy that they're trying to apply. And I mean, I know Dan's got some bit on that because we discussed that on Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, for me and our business here, it's, manufacturing. A lot of our customers have been furloughed and, are working from home. And I'm literally getting, if I get 2 customer emails a day, that's probably 1 more than the day before. It's, the whole interaction piece is just really dried up here. But like you say, Craig, it's given us the opportunity to really sort of say, well, let's just stop. Let's go and revisit and repurpose and redevelop our plans so that when we come out the back of this, we're going to have that agility and that focus to go, do you know what? I know exactly where I'm going to go and spend my time because I've had a period where I've been researching the company, and everyone gets to know their customer and the specific stakeholders. But when you go through these annual reports or financial statements, you really get to understand what the customer is trying to achieve, and you get to learn about them on paper, which makes you really credible when you're talking to executives and important people at the different customers you have. So for me, it's been
sorry to interrupt you there, but I just want to delve into that a little bit more. So you've alluded to reading company reports. Why are you reading them? What you're looking for? How are you using that information? And can you perhaps talk to us about some of the things you're doing around account planning on that as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, everyone knows their own job really well, and this isn't sales 101, but the sort of things that I'm looking for in an annual report is like, what are their corporate objectives? What are their strategic initiatives? What are the things that they're specifically trying to achieve this year or next year? And then I'm trying to sort of deduce from that what challenges and what pressures they have, so that we can look to sell to their strategic pain. And as I say, by taking a step back and looking at that, you can really build competitive preference. You can really put some good specific metrics in there and deliver a clear message. So like I said, when we come out of lockdown, I know where I'm going to go and spend my time, because I've done a really good set of account plans. We've validated them with many stakeholders here in our business. And it's actually been a really refreshing thing to do. So yeah, it is doom and gloom, and obviously everyone's being impacted by the all of the COVID stuff. But I'm trying to take the positive from it, and as these guys will probably talk to later, there's lots of other things that we can pivot into and other opportunities that this is bringing. So does that answer your question, Sam? Yeah,
no, perfect. And I liked the analogy that you used the other day, is that you're effectively preparing yourself. It's your pre-season at the moment, and it's having had time to do stuff that probably has just got pushed to the back of the queue.
Yeah. I mean, and everyone that's in sales will know that, and I think a symptom of it is that everyone's got so much stuff to be doing, and everyone's got forecasts and customer meetings, and kind of account planning and preparation gets pushed to one side, and it almost becomes a tick box exercise. I'm just doing that to tick a box so I can go and do my actual job. So yeah, it's
sorry, Dan. I was just going to say, if we take that back, I'll come to you in a sec, Craig and Chris. But if we take that back a step, you 3 guys are obviously incredibly senior in terms of the sales roles that you find yourself in now. But that's no different if you're in an SDR role. And I know, Craig, you work really closely with your SDR, so we'll come on to talk about that in a sec. But it's exactly the same thing. It's preparing. It's probably having conversations with people that ordinarily we might not be able to get hold of, which we'll come on to talk about as well. But what Dan's talking about, I think, is at a pretty high level. And if you're selling at that level, key accounts, absolutely. But also we can be using this time, if we're in a more transactional process or if in an SDR or a BDR role as well, to make sure the people that we're calling is right, the data's good, our process is good, our toolkit is good, which we'll look at tech in a little bit. So yeah, just to add to that, go on. Let's come to you, Chris. Craig, we've heard a bit of you already, so we'll go to Chris first, and we'll come across to you.
Yeah, no, I was just going to pick up on that conversation about customers' priorities, and I think If we look at it at a really high level, I think there's kind of three things happening. The first has been really, really tactical and reactive. And that is all of a sudden, all these customers we're talking to, their day-to-day operations have changed massively. People aren't going to be able to come into the office in the way they have been. There's going to be disruptions to their supply chain and all these sorts of challenges. So if you look at the top level, whether it's a CEO, whether it's a managing director, a board, whatever it is, they've been looking at, right, okay, what do we need to do tactically to make sure we can keep productivity as high as possible? So I'm sure for a lot of people out there, there's been some really good short-term wins. If you're working for an IT reseller, that's laptops, printers, VPN connectivity, all these types of things, customers are going to be needing it, and they're going to be needing it really, really quickly. I think we're now coming out of that tactical phase a little bit. I think everybody's getting close to business as usual, whatever usual is in this kind of new world we're moving into. But the next thing that's coming, regardless of whether you're a pessimist or an optimist, at best, it's going to be economic turmoil. At worst, there could be a recession or something like that coming down. So I think if you look at that top level, the leaders of businesses, they're really looking at two things. The first is worst case scenario, if there is a recession, are we resilient? Are we a business that's still going to be around in 18 months' time or whenever it is? But no CEO can, talk to his stakeholders, their shareholders, about a plan to survive. They've got to be talking to them about what they're going to do differently to make sure that they thrive and they're in a position to grow during those times. So the second thing they're going to be looking at is, the structure of the organization. Where are their opportunities? How can they start to create new markets? How can they improve customer experience? How can they make sure they're in a position where they can grow through what could potentially be really challenging times? And I think for all of us as sellers, that does create opportunity. We don't necessarily know all of them are yet, but if we're spending the time to do the research, see what statements are coming out at shareholder meetings and all this type of stuff to understand what's happening within our customers, if we're talking to the stakeholders that we've got and understanding, how it's impacting them in those changes in strategy, unquestionably, there's going to be opportunity. They might just be slightly different opportunities to what we thought they might have been when we were doing our initial plans in January. So I think there's, it's not going to be easy, but I think there's definite cause for optimism there.
Thanks, Chris. Craig, anything to add?
Sure. Yeah, it was all about the time we got, to almost upskill ourselves. The people that I work with closely will probably laugh when they hear me say this, because I've said it so many times, but we all look for that business sponsor, the person that we have a good relationship with inside the company. However, if I look at certainly the deals that I've been involved in the last few years, you don't necessarily get to that sort of large ELA deal if you don't have an exec sponsor, but also more importantly a procurement sponsor. So someone in procurement that can basically fly the flag through the buying process. We've already mentioned about selling to someone. It's all about trying to understand how they buy. So in this downtime, pick up the phone, build a relationship with that person in procurement and understand their needs. So I'll give you an example of that, of what we've been doing. So we basically, befriended a champion within a tier 1 bank who is, flying the flag for us in procurement. We understood, what do you do in a daily job? I'm in the data world. So what we actually did is understood his use case and built out a solution in our platform to basically tick his box. So it did two things, right? So it basically to buy into our software, because usually, salespeople just see procurement people as a tick box exercise. We just need to steamroller past this person, build a slight relationship, but we don't actually care about you because all we want is a PO at the end of the day. However, with this downtime, the process that we sort of ran was, look, no, we do care about you. We understand you've got all contracts coming from, every orifice. So what we can do is build you a solution to help prove, the value of our software. And it's helped tremendously, to be honest, because over those few sessions, we've actually uncovered, the whole buying cycle of who we need to talk to. He's introduced us to the people that, actually hold the purse strings. And, just within that last few weeks, we've able to, really identify that procurement sponsor, which I think, is so important to be able to get to that, next stage of size deal that we're all trying to drive towards.
Thanks very much, Craig. I'm gonna move on now, because I think this is really, really important. And we spoke about it the other day. We are faced with unprecedented times, as we've spoken about. We're told constantly that we're going to go into recession. Chris, thanks for reminding everybody. I once got told, don't say the R word. You mentioned it once, but I think you got away with it. But I think it's really important that we think about how we get our mindset right, because there's going to be a lot of people that are out there going, oh, my market's dead. I can't do anything. I can't sell at the moment. They're going to feed that on and all the rest of it. Whether you're wrong or whether you say you can't or whether you say you can, ultimately you're right. So guys, what are you doing kind of from a mindset standpoint that is ensuring that you're keeping things moving, even if you can't close stuff right now, i.e. opening new stuff or moving stuff along? Somebody want to take a go at that? Go on then, Chris.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I think a lot of it comes down to time management. If I look at my normal week, I spend 3 days down in London meeting customers every day, meetings, coffees, beers in the evening. And actually, I'm condensing my inverted commas work, my follow-ups, my prospecting, my internal demands into those 2 days where I'm working from home. All of a sudden, I'm now from home 5 days, so I've got a lot more time to spread that 2 days work out. So I think going to the point that both Dan and Craig are talking about, there's an opportunity there to make sure you're filling the time in the right ways in terms of account plan and those types of things. But also, from a mindset perspective, break the day up in the right way, manage your time effectively. On a normal day, I'm working from home, my lunch break, 20 minutes, grabbing a sandwich, often at my desk, cracking on. At the moment, it's an hour and a half, not necessarily exactly an hour and a half, but I'm finishing, going for a run, coming back, having some lunch with my wife, get a shower, come back down, and then go again for the afternoon. So I think, my message would definitely be, don't feel guilty about putting breaks in your day that actually make you feel a bit better about things, whether it's going for a walk, exercising, lunch with your wife, whatever it is, find opportunities to break the day up, and don't feel guilty about it. Because if you're trying to do 8 till 8, 5 days a week, full intensity, you are going to break down. It's not going to be good for you, and I don't think you're going to get good results.
Thanks, Dan.
I actually think, Chris, I just think you're dead right, and I actually found that I'm more productive by having those regular breaks. Like the half an hour to go and do the maths homework, come back, or go on the watt bike for a bit of time, or go for a walk, or take the kids out on the scooters. When I get back, I just feel really, really focused. And then I find that I blast through an hour's worth of work, and then something else will pull me off with the kids, or making dinner, or taking the dog out, whatever. So I just find it really short and sharp bursts of making me more productive. I might actually build it into my whole working life when this is over. I don't know how my boss would take to that, but it's I think it's about staying focused, and everyone's in a different situation. So I do agree with a lot you said there, Chris.
I mean, if you look at essentially what's happened, right, we've all had our mental releases taken away from us. And I think the most important thing is, we obviously all work in a very structured manner normally. This is a very unstructured environment. So I think the first port of call is, or certainly what I've done, is built some structure into my day. If I look at, when I wake up in the morning, I almost go down a checklist of 5 things. The first thing is my family's health, the number one thing. Are we all okay? A close family, okay. And if that's a tick box, I move on to the next one. And the next one is financial health and security, right? Because, you go through, if that's not right, your head's not right. The third thing is mental well-being. Everything that Chris and Dan has just mentioned links back to that mental release, whether it's walking the dog, going on the watt bike, 100 press-ups, doing the kids' homework. That's so important, that mental release, which we've, that well-being to keep us on track. The fourth thing is friends, and I've probably had more FaceTimes with friends or uni mates or colleagues than I ever have done, because it's so important to, see people's faces, get that ideas bouncing off each other. I mean, the whole reason why I've done this, right, is to try and understand how, 2-3 other people at the top of their game are surviving through this and what they're doing to make themselves better, and the fifth thing is really work. Right. So if you look at those things, it's absolutely in that order. Anyone that tells me that work is number one is lying. So if I go down that checklist of every single morning, and if I can say yes to all 5 things, then I'm in a good shape to nail the day. And I mean, just specifically, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, Sam, but how my day rolls, I have a check-in meeting, which is face-to-face via Teams, Microsoft Teams, in the morning for 45 minutes with the team. So I go through, daily tasks in the day. We'll literally pick an account and we'll say, right, who's done this, who's done that, and we'll come out the end of that session with a to-do list basically for that account to hold everybody accountable. So my technical guy will then go and send his emails or calls that he needs to do. My BDR will then go and intro those emails that he needs to do, and I will have all that the tasks as well that I need to complete. Then at 10 o'clock every day I take an hour and a half out to do exercise. So whether it be like Dan said, I go on my spin bike or a run or just to clear my head. And then I come back and then I've purposely booked out an hour in the afternoon to let my wife have a break. She's at home, she's 5 weeks from having another child. We've got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. If her head's not right, then it's going to impact everything else. So I think, in terms of how my day rolls, that's how it's rolling at the moment. Having running a global business, the hardest thing for me is I can work 24 hours. You've got APAC that wake up before we do. I've got the US that go to bed, 8 hours after we do, right? So it can get fairly daunting. So having that structure and being militant towards it is the key.
I'm going to take that one step further, and I will pipe in here, because I think one of the things that the recruitment sector do incredibly well is work efficiently and work with that structure. I think probably the only other company I've come across that has got that really disciplined structure to the level that some recruitment companies got is somewhere like Foxtons, where literally everybody in that business, whether they're a junior or whether they're a director, are doing the same thing at the same time every day. And I think for a lot of people, maybe a lot of salespeople even, they'll be completely out of their comfort zone. They'll be out of an office environment. And I would encourage the use of sprints. Now, a sprint is a session, maximum 2 hours, with an outcome to be achieved from that. So it could be account planning, 3 accounts for 2 hours, and that's all you're going to do. Phone is face down, and you are in that sprint focusing on that task. It might be, and I've done one this morning where I've been identifying senior decision makers within a particular sector, within a particular group of companies that have received funding in however recently, okay? But the fact is, by keeping those sprints, it adds discipline to what we're doing and making sure that we're still getting those key activities done. Because again, it's about input. It's about having conversations. And I'll come on to this now about, we spoke about this the other day, guys. There is opportunity through everything, through all of this. Yes, there are difficult times. Yes, we might not be able to get POs out. Certainly I know you were sharing that with me, Dan, but we've potentially got some opportunity here. What are you guys seeing in terms of opportunities, and how are you making the most of that currently? Who wants to have a run at it? Go, Chris.
Yeah, no, I hope to pick that up. I guess it's twofold. Because I think the opportunities we're engaged in already, it's almost a bit of taking a step back and go through a bit of a requalification process. We know the position we were in, but we also know things are changing. But what I'm also starting to see is, we'll talk about pivoting in just a few moments, but a really good example. Who's tried to go on a B&Q website or something like that to try and order something to pick up? I think people are in waiting lists of 30, 40,000 people, something on those lines. Yet if you go onto Amazon and you want to buy something there, you're straight in, you can order those products straight away. So, straight away you can start to see how certain organizations, I can imagine a customer like B&Q, they're certainly not one of mine, but an organization like that, they've built their business primarily around people, knowing people are going to go into their stores, they're going to want to buy things, they're going to want to have that touch and feel in looking at products. Now, all of a sudden, things are changing. There's this huge online demand. So I think, if you're an organization selling cloud services, if you're an organization, like us, for an example, selling security that can enable that, absolutely there's going to be opportunities with organizations like that where they suddenly very quickly have to figure out a way that they can start to scale to meet demand that they probably never planned for before. So I think regardless of what sector you look at, there's going to be opportunities. It's just a case of trying to find the right ones.
Thanks, Chris. Dan, Craig, anything to add? I've got a couple of bits on this, unless you got anything specific. No.
What Craig was talking about around, structure and being very process driven and having that rigidness in his process in the morning. I think that, and there's no surprise why, Craig's obviously a rock star sales guy, because, he has a process and he follows it. And I think, if anything, this period is just helping us all sharpen those tools. And, to what you were saying earlier, Chris, looking at the customer's priorities, what this is doing for me is saying, well, if we've got an opportunity in flight and it's kind of stuck or is stagnating, like, how is this going to impact them? And is it going to put a threat on our opportunity, on our deal? How do we sort of start a flanking strategy to say, well, we need to figure out if the value is still there, or how is this going to impact them in a different way? So I think it's
having those difficult conversations as well. I think certainly in my own sales career and certainly in organizations where I've trained or coached in the past, I think sometimes salespeople are scared to hear no, so they don't have that awkward conversation when things change. Because you might be sat there, you might have a big deal which is covering a large part of your pipeline, and deep down you might be thinking, I'm worried about this, particularly with all the changes. It's being brave enough to go and have that conversation, and actually that might provide you with the opportunity to change what it is you're talking about, because it's a different world now to what it was. Go on, Craig.
Yeah, so just on that, I think sales process hasn't changed, right? Just because we're in the middle of a global pandemic, the sales process is the same. I think what we need to do is sell with empathy, fully appreciate, what your customer is going through. And that way you can start to build that relationship. We hear this a lot in sales, people buy from people, but how do you actually do that? And I think this is a good opportunity. And I'll give you an example, right? So I've been trying to speak to a chief data officer for a few months now. When he's in the office, he's just literally meeting after meeting after meeting. Well, last Wednesday, I had a 45-minute chat with him whilst he's walking his dog, right, in the park. And it was such a much more relaxed environment. So people are, business hasn't stopped. People are just operating into different things. He might not be in a suit and tie in an office in Canary Wharf, but, he's a lot more relaxed. So it allowed me to really, really just have a normal conversation, build that relationship. The same thing, a lot more video calls. You're getting an insight into people's worlds. I mean, you only have to look at Dan's whiteboard behind him to understand how complicated his world is.
yeah.
We missed that because I'm turning the mics off to try and help with the audio. Yeah, look, I like that, Craig. I think we're always told to sell from the top down and try and get senior people on board, and I think that's something we've got an opportunity to do now. And it's just about picking up the phone. These guys will have guys and girls will have conversations with you, and it's far easier to pin some of them down now. I'm certainly finding it. Go on, Dan. Sorry.
Yeah, Craig, just go back to your point there. So what's that conversation with the chief digital officer? What's that enabled you to do? What's the upshot for you? Is it obviously meant that you've fostered a much more personal relationship? What was the outcome from a business perspective? Have you been sponsored into doing any piece of work? You've done some champion development there. What's the outcome?
Yeah, so it's going back to those 3 points that I mentioned before. We're developing a procurement champion. We're obviously got a good relationship with our normal, business day-to-day champion. Now, in order to try and do a decent sized deal, hopefully in this year, we need to build out our exec community. And what that call was all about was seeing if we can basically leapfrog into other areas of the business. A lot of these people, especially that chief data officer level, sit on a center of excellence or some kind of analytics forum. So it was all about how do we become have a stronger voice across that C-suite. And it was just he was telling me stuff that he probably wouldn't normally tell me, if we were sitting over a desk, right, with a coffee in his office. Yeah, that was the reason behind it all, just so he could try and loop me in, and so I could understand how his world sits a bit clearer.
Chris?
Yeah, no, I think just following on from that, that's something anecdotally I've really been experiencing. I think we've all got customers, particularly customers where we've got stakeholders who are particularly senior, where they can, be a bit prickly sometimes. Whenever you're going into a conversation with them, you've got to make sure you're double prepared. You've got to be expecting the unexpected. And, sometimes they like to make sure that you feel their seniority a little bit. I'm sure we've all experienced that a little bit. I haven't been getting any of that in this new working from home world. Majority of the time, or almost all the time, where I've been on remote sessions, they're sat there in a t-shirt, shirt, pair of shorts, whatever, way more relaxed than they would be in a corporate environment. And, that ability to be able to build relationships, feeling like a peer, as opposed to a salesperson selling into the C-suite, it just seems far easier, than it would going into their office, meeting them in person, or anything on those lines. So I do think, in terms of trying to break down boundaries a little bit and try and get as close to being peers with some of your senior contacts as you can, this is a really good opportunity. If you can manage to get that airtime with them to have the discussions.
John Craig, yeah.
So I've got one more point on this. So, we've talked at a very high level here about, doing large enterprise scale deals. I work very closely, probably speak to him 3 or 4 times a day, right? Is my BDR, the person doing some really hard grunt work on the phones. And, I'm sort of coaching him and mentoring him how to structure his day. But, what does it look like and what activities are we doing from, ground up? So something that works really, really well is, I've already mentioned, we've got like a business champion. We've literally gone online and got the company structure, which you can normally find, just simple Google search, and actually mapping out, where we exist in the organization. Or, I've got a couple of accounts where we're not so far deep, within their sort of procurement cycle. And it's like, okay, where do we want to get to? Let's find their names. Let's do some research on LinkedIn. So proper, graft of getting contacts and then putting a cadence together of how we contact these organizations. And, it works from the top down. I've got examples of where I've had my CEO send an email just yesterday at that C-suite level is, look, we're in good shape as a business. You're a valued customer. We want to help develop that relationship. Let's get on a call. Okay. And then we've got, on the other end, I've got, work that and cadences that we're chucking out with my SDR, helping, our software go viral amongst, in my case, that analyst community. How can I help this person save 8 hours a week, essentially? Now you've got a bit of time on your hands. Let's just have a 30-minute demo. And we're finding ourselves being able to have a lot more time to be able to plan. And when we've got that company structure in front of us that we've purely just copied off the internet, and we've had our business champion take us through where we should be focusing, it means that, as Dan said earlier, we're going to come out of this process laser sharp, and we're going to be able to hit the ground running because we've put so much groundwork in already.
Superb. No, thanks for that. And just a little point. We've got a few questions coming through now, which is great. So thank you very much if you put a question in. And there's quite a lot of stuff talking about new business process, which we'll come to at the end when we're looking at questions. But I think one of the things, just to round this point off, we've got opportunity at the moment. Generally, C-suite or our decision makers have got more time available to them, so they're probably more open to having that conversation. I think it's about how we position things, and it's about getting them on the phone in the first place. If we don't believe we can't sell, we're not structuring our day properly, we're not going to be putting the right amount of time and effort into actually trying to get these people on the phone. And I'm sure everybody that's listening to this is already using, if you're trying to prospect people, are already using tools such as Lusher, which is a plug-in to LinkedIn, which is a GDPR compliant tool, which will allow you to get mobile numbers for people. But if you not do it, and again, just to round it up, I was speaking to someone really senior recently, a sales director, and he said, actually, I love times of emergency because it's the one time I can get the CEO of my clients here. Because if you can go to them with something that's relevant because you've done your prep, like Dan said, you've understood your client, the chances are, if you can solve a problem for them at a time like this, they're going to give you a bit of airtime. So it's like anything, isn't it? It's getting the right proposition to the right person at the right time, but it's not all doom and gloom. We've probably got a better chance of getting airtime at the moment than we ordinarily would do when it's business as usual. Anything to add there, guys, or can we move on? No, I think we can move on. Excellent. So, Chris, you mentioned. Sorry, Dan, go on. You put your hand in the air. Fine.
You need to take him off mute.
Do I?
There we go.
I was just going to say that the bit that Craig mentioned around getting his CEO to write a letter to the customer, that I think everyone needs to take a minute to reflect on that, because that is a really powerful tool, I think, and I only calling it out because it's something that I'm going to be taking forward, because I think it's really important, and it gives everyone that confidence and that stability that, you know, this is a short speed bump in the year, and once we're out, we're all going to be back on it. So yeah, I like that idea, Craig.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Thanks, Dan. I did want to mention that, and I think we're all getting the emails. I seem to be getting 4 emails a day from CEOs about how they're responding to the coronavirus and so on, some more relevant than others. And I don't think it's necessarily about that. I think it's, you know, I spoke to a couple of people that have done this, customers that they're talking to, they've got deals that are maybe hitting a roadblock, or there's nervousness, you know, a personalized letter signed by the CEO that's saying, look, we're not going anywhere. This is us. You're our priority. We can deliver on what we said we're going to deliver. Can go a hell of a long way to kind of allaying those fears. So yeah, thank you for that, Dan. We mentioned pivoting earlier. I really like this, and this is something early on in my career I certainly had some success with back at Pareto, Craig. I'll maybe come on to that in a sec. But Chris, you mentioned this earlier. I think lots of organizations, lots of individuals are having success through being able to pivot very quickly. And when we say pivot, we mean identifying a new sector or a new product line or a new module within our software, which all of a sudden has this increased relevance. So maybe if we could talk about how you guys are pivoting and how it can benefit the sales process. Yep, you're on, Chris.
Cool. Yeah, I don't think necessarily needs to be something new or something shiny or anything along those lines. You know, I think the position we were in with a business, we had something that was really well established, but actually became suddenly probably more relevant than it's been, you know, over the last few years. You know, and what I mean by that is, as we discussed earlier, suddenly organizations going remote, people working remotely, and, you know, particularly in financial services, a lot of those individuals were already well enabled to be able to work remotely. You know, they had corporate devices, laptops that had security. We were working cybersecurity, so they had right cybersecurity controls, all that sort of stuff. But not everybody in that organization. You know, there might be people like office managers who still have work to do, HR, you know, and other departments that didn't necessarily have access to mobile corporate devices. So one of the things we did at a corporate level, which allowed us to pivot really quickly, is say, do you know what? We've got a market-leading home endpoint solution, you know, that's designed for the consumer market. Let's go to all of our customers and say, guys, if you've got people working remotely who haven't got access to corporate devices, and you've not got that ability to be able to control what they're doing on there, allow them or help them deploy our technology free of charge. You know, so straight away, you know, if they're trying to access corporate assets, then you've got some level of confidence that they're going to have at least some level of security on there. The second thing was, you know, again, as people start to become mobile, the user education became even more important. You know, people working from home, different devices, trying to access corporate devices, corporate assets. I'm sure we've all had emails, probably COVID-19 or Corona related, that actually had either malicious links, tried to take you to a malicious website, or something, you know, that was definitely had bad intentions. And it became really important for organizations to try and educate their users and make sure their users were less likely to click on these sort of things. So again, we've got a tool that does phishing simulations. So security teams can do campaigns on their own employees to look at who clicks on links, who goes to websites, who inputs credentials, and all this type of thing. And again, we made that free to our customers, you know, for a period of time. No guarantees on timescales. What we've said is, you know, until all this is over, you know, it's an open invitation. The key thing is, we're here. We know you're going through these challenges at the moment, and we want to help. Now, that's not, because that's all free tools, that's not delivered any immediate revenue. But what it has done is help to show those customers, you know, we are an organization that care. We do believe in partnership. We do want to work with you. And although we don't know what it could lead to in the future, I've got absolutely no doubts that in some of those customers, you know, it's going to lead to other opportunities that you might not have got to had you not have been one of the companies that stood up in a difficult time. So I think, you know, how you react through difficult times, what you can do for customers is really, really important.
Craig, final point on this before we move on.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I mean, if you just look at where we are at the minute, we've talked a lot about, a bad time creates, potentially good opportunity. I think if you look at whether you're selling, anybody, who's on this call, whatever you're selling, you're trying to help someone make a decision somewhere along the line. And, it's pretty obvious that companies are going to be making some fairly serious decisions over the next coming weeks or months. So if you put yourself in their shoes of, okay, so we've got our potential USP, how we used to sell, just think about, the mindset of what those people who are making those decisions are going through. And obviously how, and bear in mind what we mentioned earlier about selling with empathy, which picks up on Chris's point, and just see where you fit within that sort of decision-making profile. Whatever your software or service or whatever you offer, think about how you can benefit someone who's having to make a key decision. In our perspective in Alteryx, we're a heavy data wrangling platform. So people aren't making finger in the air decisions over the next few weeks. They're going to be making very data-driven decisions, and obviously we're in a good spot to do that. But yeah, just have that sort of mindset, take a step back and think about how you can tick those boxes.
And yeah, I think as well, I'd just like to add to this as well. As salespeople, we're on the front line. If we're doing all the things that the guys have already spoken about, we're having better conversations with the relevant people and the right people. Feed this back to our own businesses. Chris is very lucky there. He works for a fantastic business that have come up very, very quickly with some great ideas. They might not be immediate revenue ideas, but great tools that organizations can use. And I see this all the time. Free downloads of the software, webinars, white paper, whatever it might be. Don't just wait for that to happen. If you're the sales guy and there's a requirement for something, or your company can do something, escalate it. Move it on. Don't just sit there and wait for it to happen, because I think sometimes I talk to salespeople all day, every day. If they've not hit target, it's never their fault. Okay, it's never their fault. Take it into your own hands. You're speaking to the clients. You know what they want. You know the challenges that they're going through. You report that back. It's your job. Report that back to the business. And I guarantee you, again, just one final point on this, and again, looping back to mindset, if the business thought you couldn't sell, you wouldn't still be in your job, you'd be furloughed, right? So if you're not furloughed, we've got a job to do, whether that's selling now or moving further down the line. Just conscious of time, so we've got a few questions, guys. I just want to come on to, all three of you had fantastic years last year, all, top performers globally within your organizations. And I found it really interesting the other day when you spoke about, and let's keep it to 2 points max each, please, because we've got questions to come on to and then to wrap up. But just what were your key learns from, even though you've had really successful years last year, what were the key things that you took and learned from last year that will make you better salespeople moving forward? Craig, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, I'll take that. So, I've mentioned this a couple of times today, but it's the three champions. We all get stuck on that one business sponsor. If you don't have a procurement champion, your business as usual champion and your exec champion, the thought of really growing out your product or service that you're trying to sell, you're going to struggle with. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the fundamental shift, how organizations are now rolling out, in my world, software. It's all through an analytical center of excellence. So if you don't understand how a company essentially rolls your software out after you've sold it to them, I would spend a lot of time trying to understand that process. Now, I could talk probably for an hour just on the center of excellence piece in itself, but that is a massive takeaway for me. So now I've basically helped a couple of companies set this center of excellence approach up. And we're now being brought into other areas and other businesses, and we're helping them basically get to that, what does good look like, Craig? And we all talk about it, trying to become that business, trusted advisor. And I feel like now I can talk confidently and guide these, businesses or analytical practices through this massive change of how they, if you look at how IT used to make all the decisions, the business now make the decisions. And IT are basically a service provider. And that's really what I'm talking about. But I'm going to stop there because I can go on all day about that. But that's the two key takeaways for me.
Thanks, Craig. Go on then. Let's get to Dan next.
So exactly the same as your first one, Craig. So it's building and testing champions. And, I had a hard lesson last year on testing a champion in procurement, which I didn't do possibly as good as I could have done. But you know, that's my key takeaway from last year is building and testing champions. And then the other thing was around just, you know, solving real pain and understanding what the impact is to the different business units of a business. And, you know, once you understand that and you're able to articulate it and line a value proposition, it makes your life a lot easier as a sales guy. So understanding the pain, understanding the impact, and being audible ready when you're relaying this back to the customer with a solution.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dan. Very quickly, Chris.
I think probably my key one from last year would be keeping perspective, you know, particularly when you're going through not a great time, you know, because if I reflect on my year last year, it was all going really well, all guns blazing. And then it got to August, I got back from holiday, and it was like something serious had gone wrong in my top 5 opportunities for the rest of the year. And I spent, you know, quite a few weeks down, beating myself up. It's all gone wrong, trying to find excuses, but then having to be accountable myself. But actually, I sat there, worked it all out. All 5 of those deals closed, and, you know, ended up over 200%. So I think you look back on it, and that was a real lesson for me that will stay with me in my career. You know, when things do look down, you know, keep some perspective on it. Because if you dig deep, do the right activity, you know, there's every chance you're going to be able to find a way to turn it around.
And I think your boss is on this call, so your key takeaways there. What? Don't go on holiday. So you're not having any more holidays, right? Okay. All right. Thanks, Chris. Right, we're gonna move on now and look at some of the questions from the floor. There's a bit of a common theme, so I want to try and gauge a few of these together. And I know, Chris, I've spoke to you about it, but there's quite a few questions that are being asked around new business and about how we're changing or tweaking our approaches. Now, Dan, Craig, I'm conscious that you're not doing heaps of this, given kind of what you're doing in your current roles, as in the business generation part of this. Chris, I know I spoke to you the other day, and you'd had a week. At the end of the week, you'd sort of said, well, that felt like a bit of a waste of time. And a week later, your diary was completely full. So are you doing anything with regards to your new business generation that's any different now?
I think so. This is a really interesting period that we're all going through. And, you know, obviously we all want it to end as quickly as possible. But by the same token, there's a part of me as an experiment would like to see what it would be like if we stayed in lockdown for the year. And the reason I say, no, I don't want it to happen, but as an experiment. And the reason I say that is, although there's frustrations and things that aren't working as well, the amount of extra time you've got in your day to be able to do things that you wouldn't normally have the time to do is absolutely huge. So, I mean, as an example, prospecting, you know, I've got 15 pretty large accounts. That sucks up 60, 70% of my time. And my prospecting and cadence into that prospecting is, you know, if I'm being honest, sometimes somewhat sporadic. You know, fast forward to where we are now, and, you know, I'm at my desk at 7:30 in the morning. You know, calls aren't going to start till 9:30. I've got that time to go and put my cadence emails together, you know, and make sure they're on point, relevant to the previous email that I did. So I think just having that extra time to be able to do cadence on the activities that you normally do naturally is leading to results, you know, because I look at my diary, and every week I look at, go to start planning my next week. And I'm like, wow, this is a lot fuller than what I expected. And a lot of it is new stuff. So I think a lot of it is just that ability to have more time to do the proper cadence and things.
Thanks, Craig.
So Sam, yeah, I mean, even though I'm not, you know, necessarily on the phones at the sharp end generating new business, obviously I do have a BDR that sits within my team that, you know, I'm helping build out those cadences with. And, you know, in this current time, we all do have a little bit more time, so we can send more meaningful emails. And Dan touched on this earlier. So, you know, off the back of my piece about getting, you know, well, let's say you don't have any contact with that company at all. You know, you get their structure off the internet. You make a map of where you want to go, but then you can do some research on those people, right? It's pretty easy to get information about people in this day and age, and send that person a more, you know, tactical email approach that resonates with them. And, you know, typically we're working at 5,000 miles an hour normally, commuting around, but, you know, just spend 10 more minutes on putting an email together that's relevant, and it might have a bit better impact.
I think for me, and I do a lot of new business. Obviously, recruitment is new business driven. I think I'll go back to this time and time again. activity is crucial, and pick up the phone. Like, people are answering the phone. I've had more conversations with C-level VPs of sales, sales directors over the last 3 weeks than I probably did in the previous 4 or 5 months, because people are available. Okay, so from a new business standpoint, I would say that let's pick up the phone, go in at a senior level. You might only have 3 or 4 minutes with the VP, but I tell you what, if you have a conversation with the VP and you can glean some information from that, and then you're going down a level within that organization, it will make that next conversation a hell of a lot easier to build credibility really quickly, to be able to reference that call and reference what you've learned from it. So that would be it for me. I think as well, think outside the box. The whole reason that I've done this as a business, it's part of a new business strategy. It's part of engaging with candidates. So whilst not everybody's going to be hiring at the moment, this is a way that breaks down some barriers, maybe gets them to view this, or I can send it forward and talk about it with them. So I'm not just a recruiter, I'm someone that actually understands the world of software sales. So I think it's about looking outside the box as well and thinking, what can you as an individual, or you as a business, do that just differentiates that strategy? Oh, and work on your lyrics and your tone, because they matter. Enough of that, because it's not sales training 101. Sorry, Craig.
Yeah, so I've got one more piece to add to this, and it's all, it goes back to the structure point. It's, we put a lot of effort to speak to somebody new in new business, and then how are you recording that? So I'm fairly anal in how we track opportunities within our CRM system. So it's almost, who did we speak to? What business were they part of? Where do they sit globally in my sense? And what is their function? So what we're not doing is we put 20 or 30 opportunities in the system, and then they just go abyss, and then you come back like 2 months later and it's like, I don't have no idea what that was even about. If you put this stuff in the CRM system, it needs to be worth going into the CRM system. You've put some time in trying to contact this person, so why wouldn't you now put the time in to label and mark that up correctly? And the same thing goes with your inbox within your Outlook or whatever email tool that you might use, right? It's being militant on who we've spoke to, who's your account, and literally tracking to the nth degree of how you're going to follow up, because there is so much good work that's gone in my case with my BDR, but we've just missed things that we did at the start of the year. So this time specifically has given us the opportunity to literally, the other day, I went back to 6 months within my email inbox and each account, and I was like, right, who's contacted this guy? Who's done this? And it literally spun off maybe 20 actions on each person within my team, and it allowed us to start digging up some of them stones that we'd already unturned but we've forgotten about.
Thanks, Craig. Right, I'm sorry to rush you along. We're coming to the end of our time here. I think there's a nice question that will bring it all together from Steve Lowndes, who trained me right at the start of my career. I'm pretty sure Steve's still at Pareto, so thanks for joining us, Steve. And we'll go to each of you for this. Dan, we'll start with you. Steve said, keen to get your thoughts on how you think the world of sales will be different after we come out the other side of this. I think this is a nice way to try and wrap up. So Dan, with you firstly.
A great question. Wow. I think for my business specifically, I think there's going to be a lot more. I think we as salespeople are going to be, we're going to be under a lot of pressure. To be honest, because when we come out the other end of this pandemic, they're going to go business as usual in manufacturing, and it's going to explode, and they're going to be really busy. So I think from our side, it's going to be it's just having that making sure that we're doing all the right things. I probably haven't answered the question because it's such a good question. But let me deflect over to Craig or Chris to see their thoughts.
Go on, Chris. I'll stop you vaping.
Yeah, it's nice a pen. I wouldn't say it's a change. I think it's going to be even more of a focus on being able to deliver value to the business. I think any projects that we're sat there looking at, we've all got lazy projects, where you've got a good relationship with the customer. They've come to you and said, Chris, we're looking at this. It's something you guys have got in your portfolio, and you've straight away gone into selling and demonstrating what's the best fit for the requirement. Those projects, are they going to close? probably not. You know, I think we all need to be taking a big step back and looking at, if we don't know the value to the customer and we can't quantify it and we couldn't articulate it to the CEO in a few sentences, invest X, we're going to save you, enable you, reduce risk, then it's probably not going to happen. So I think it's what's always been true in sales. I just think there's going to be even more focus on it.
Thank you. Craig?
Yeah, just to take off from that point, I think you're going to have to, have laid the foundations in this downtime, or else you're going to come out and find this a struggle. But I think businesses are, it's obvious they're going to be more cautious to spend. You're not just going to come out the back of this and return business as usual. And, to Chris's point, you're going to have to sell by leading with value and clear-cut use cases, prove whatever you're selling is worth them investing in. So I think we're going to have to do a bit more, work around not throwing mud at the wall and having it stick. I think you're going to have to, get that dartboard out and obviously be a lot more focused. So, your solution actually sticks and people understand why they're buying your solution. But yeah, I mean, fundamentally, I think the world will change. I think we all will. Rather than go off the deep end, I think, we've all got caught up in this materialistic, it will never happen to us world. And I think even spending some time at home, with the kids, you don't necessarily have to go to, posh holidays and all this. Actually, just getting a couple of sticks in the garden, having a stick fight gives us much pleasure, than flying, well, not necessarily flying first class somewhere to Dubai, but you know what I'm trying to say, right? I think people's mindset will fundamentally change and they recognize, the base level of everything.
Guys, I'm going to wrap it up now. Just going to summarize very quickly. First of all, thanks to all three of you, and thanks to everybody that's sat in and listened to that. I hope people that have signed in have got as much from that as I have. I think some great points in there, and we've covered a hell of a lot, I think, in an hour, and we could probably do with going into some of those topics in a bit more depth. I think from my standpoint, some of the really interesting stuff was around mindset, around focus, ensuring all the distractions that we've now got don't take us away from the day-to-day of what we've got to do. And I think that's as relevant to a key account director as it is to an SDR or somebody in a BDR role. I think it's looking at the opportunities within this. So both from a perspective of being able to pivot, have we got a product or service that we can go to, or an industry that we think are going to go very well? The opportunity to talk to very, very senior people as well, I think is a terrific opportunity that every salesperson should be trying to do. Why not try and have a conversation with the CEO if we can get them on the phone? Because ultimately, they are the silver bullet if there is one in a situation like this. Dan, did you want to add something there?
No, sorry, I was just
thing.
pencil. Sorry.
No, great. So, look, some really good stuff there, guys. This recording will be made available, so I think you can download it if you come back here. From me, look, Sam at So Sales, we're here. If you're out in the marketplace at the moment, drop me an email. Happy to have a conversation with you. Equally, if you're a hiring manager looking at the next 6 months, appreciate might not be pertinent now, but let's have a conversation now. And just one final thing that I think is a good thing to end on: coronavirus is not the objection for why people can't meet you, can't give you a web demo, can't move along. Coronavirus is not the objection. It's what that's leading to as a business. And at the very least, you should be having a conversation off the back of that to understand and uncover the challenges that organizations are facing because of coronavirus. On that note, I think we'll leave it there. Guys, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for everybody who's logged on. And who knows, we might be back soon. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.